Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. Today we are going to make butterfly quilt blocks. So you need two different fabrics for your butterfly and then a background fabric. You don't need a lot of fabric, so you can use your scraps. And I'm going to show you how to make these butterfly quilt blocks any size you want. There's like no math involved, which is great. So let's go ahead and get started. Here are the squares for my butterfly quilt block. I have two size squares cut, 5-inch, 2.5-inch. You can cut your squares any size you want. The larger ones will be twice the size of your smaller ones. So for example, if your large blocks are 10 inches, your small blocks will be 5 inches. If your large blocks are 4 inches, your small blocks will be 2 inches. My large blocks are 5 inches. Half of 5 is 2.5, so my smaller blocks are 2.5. How many do we need? You need one large block of body fabric. This will be the top of the butterfly, and one large block of background. That's it for the large ones. Smaller ones, you need 5 squares for the body, 3 squares for the background. 2 of these squares you aren't going to need to really do anything with, so I'm going to toss these aside for now. We now have 3 and 3. We're going to pair these up, putting them right sides together. And same for our large blocks, right sides together. We're going to take a ruler and a pencil and make a line on the diagonal. That line wasn't very good. I'm going to flip this over and try again. Much better. I'm going to do the same over here. Draw a line on the diagonal of each of your small block pairs. Now you're going to take these over to the sewing machine and you are going to sew 1/4 inch to the left and 1/4 inch to the right of your line. So you have your line, you're going to have 2 seams, one 1/4 inch to the right and one 1/4 inch to the left. Same with all of these. You're going to sew 1/4 inch to the right, 1/4 inch to the left. I'm going to chain piece these one after the other. So that just means that when I finish one, I'm going to put the next one right under the machine and keep going. And the next. This makes it really quick. And the last one, the big one. Now I'm done with all my pieces, but instead of cutting my thread, I'm going to lift my presser foot to give myself a little bit of thread room there. And I spun it around, and now we're going around the other side. And now you can cut all your pieces apart. Here I have my 4 pairs that I've sewn together, and you can see that I have my pencil line in the middle and then my seam on either side. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut right on my pencil line. You can also do this with scissors. You do not need to use the rotary cutter at this point because cutting on the line you don't need to be super accurate as long as your sewing line is accurate. But I like the rotary cutter and ruler because it's really fast. I now have my original 2 full squares. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new squares and 2 of the big ones. My squares are not perfectly square. I was rushing a little bit too much. So you can take solace in knowing that however nice my butterfly comes out, yours will come out better because your squares will be so much better than mine. So you can kind of see the butterfly coming together here. Kind of cool, right? So I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together like this, right along here. I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together right along here. And these 2 pieces, you guessed it, right along here. Let's do it. Okay, these pieces are sewn together. I did not do the best job here. You see how, these points really should touch perfectly there, but it's okay. Doesn't really matter. Your points, I'm sure, will be a-okay. So now I'm gonna sew right sides together. I'm gonna sew along here and along here, along here, and there. Now, one thing that's going to be important to note is these squares here are all the same size. They're the same height. Same with this side, right? It's the same height. These two, however, because we lost a little seam allowance when making our triangles, these squares are a tiny bit larger. They're not as tall. See if you line them up. You have some extra up here and some extra down here. So try to just stay in the middle. And same with the other side. When you put the other side on, try and put it right in the middle so there's the same amount of extra on the right and the left. After we sew them, open them up and iron them, we'll trim off the excess. Now we're going to trim the bottom side of this piece here. And now I'm going to attach this to this. However, because we lost some seam allowance on our triangles, this piece is shorter than this one. This seam here wants to line up with this seam here, and you'll have a little bit of overhang on either side on this top piece. So I'm just going to flip it upside down, make sure those seams, the middle seams, are touching, and sew 1/4 inch. And this is sewn together. So now we connect this to this, but we have to trim this side a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're gonna cut our dog ears off of this bigger piece here. And I save my dog ears, as crazy as that sounds. I have this bag of like little shreds that I use for various projects. And so I throw my little dog ears in there, which is crazy, but that's what I do. Now we're gonna sew right sides together. Again, we're gonna have some overlap here. So you need to make sure that this seam is in line with this seam. Flip them over and sew 1/4 inch. And look, it's really looking like a butterfly. Isn't that beautiful? So let's square this off, and then you could just be done at that point. But for some reason, I always feel compelled to add a border to these projects. I don't know why, but for some reason, that's just how I like it. So I think I'm gonna add a nice little border around the outside. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow down the sides and a tiny strip at the bottom, and then I'll add my border on. And done. Aren't these clouds in the border here adorable? So this is what I would say about this quilt block. One thing that you could do, these wings up top got cut off when we lined them up with the bottom part of the butterfly. I think it would look visually more attractive to have these parts of the wings stay a little bit bigger. And I was thinking one way that you could go about that is before you attach this bottom part to the top part, trimming these even, but then adding a little piece of background strip to each side. And then you would be able to attach that full piece to the top, and the top wings you could keep nice and big, and then the bottom wings would just have that strip on the side. So that's one idea. I am really happy with how this block came out. I think it's really sweet, very cute. It would be perfect for a baby quilt or some kind of springtime flowery, birdy quilt. You could add this as a quilt block with lots of other little themed quilt blocks. I also think what would be really awesome is if there was kind of a strip of butterflies along one side of a quilt, like teeny tiny butterflies. You'd have to work with really small pieces, but I like working with small pieces, so I would be okay with that. But you could have all different colored butterflies just going right up the strip on the side of a quilt. I think that would be really beautiful. So you could do all kinds of things with these. But thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.